Hey gunfighters, let's do another Q&A. I got a few more, so let's do last questions for 2023. I appreciate you guys writing in with questions, I really do. Very humbling that you come here for advice. I'll forego the bio today because if you asked a question or you're interested in my answers to questions, you're likely a normal listener. I will say make sure you're subscribed, following the show, hit some stars. These come from Spotify. Spotify lets you interact, and it's supposed to be I ask you a question and you answer, but I figured I'd flip that on its head and I would work for you guys. I'm here to serve. And you could ask me questions and I'd answer them. So that's what we're doing today. So if you listen on Spotify, you might want to use that feature if you want to have a question answered on a future episode. I don't answer all the questions, but it's a good chance that you'll have yours answered. Alright, this one's from Bobby. Broad brand recommendations for concealed carry. Man, can I have any more specifics? Are you talking about a revolver? Are you talking about a semi-auto? Are you talking about carrying a full-sized handgun, which I recommend, or some super uber micro 9? But I'll do the best I can with the limited information. Here's what I'm going to tell you, some number one recommendations. You're asking this, I assume you're new, so I'm going to get user-friendly guns. My number one recommendation is get a 320 variant. Why? Because they're modular, and you don't probably know what you like yet, and they give you the ability to change them without having to get an entirely new gun. My nephew recently got in concealed carry. I gave him the same recommendation. The SIG 320, whatever size you think you want, and again, if you want to change it, they're easier to change. They're a decent... I'm not the biggest fan of polymer striker fires. I'm not saying they're the only way, but they're a good, user-friendly, and affordable option. They're a reason they're kind of the default today. So the 320, if you want to go smaller, the 365, you might look at either one of those. Also, another really good option in the end of 2023 going into 24 is the Walther PDP. You may really give that some consideration. And how could I not recommend a Glock 19, right? It's probably one of the most carried models for concealed carry in America. It's not a bad gun. It's a kind of a good in-between size. It's not a full-size handgun. It's not a super sub-micro-sized gun. It's a good shootable size gun without being so big that it's hard to conceal for a lot of people. So the Glock 19, those would be my recommendations, if you give me no other caveats. Hey, well, this is not a question, but and I don't really study these beforehand. I just kind of click through them. Did your pistol qual? It was great training. Love that. No. Fixed by MW, that's your handle. Thank you. I am so humbled that people are getting out there and running these courses of fire. If you're just hearing this, I spent quite a lot of time and effort and money developing an armed citizen's course of fire for the armed citizen. It's designed to be shot on a paper plate, but really good practical training, 25 rounds at a minimum. It's just really good practical training that I try to take my decades of training and experience and get a good armed citizen course of fire that you could go out and train. And I recently, actually just today, came out the modern rifleman course of fire. And it really gets me excited that people are out there doing this. I don't do this podcast primarily for me. I do it for you guys. I don't do this primarily for the money. I could do many other things for more money. I do it to serve, to try and use the skills that God's given me and the talents God's given me and pass them on to you. And on that note, the rest of his comment, he says, love that you are Jesus first. I find your advice and topics very helpful. And again, I'm humbled to serve. God is number one in my life and everything that I do, and this podcast is no different. Here's one, somebody trying to help me out, which I really appreciate. And I didn't know this, so it may be news for you too. It may be a little late. Oh, this is from Luke. It may be a little late, but Glock recently released the reverse of the 19X. It is the new G49, the smaller 19 frame and the longer 17 slide assembly. Oh, slide, essentially. Perhaps a consideration in your replacement search. If you guys don't know, I recently had a couple of guns, several guns actually, stolen, and trying to replace some of them for like the core battery. But I actually didn't know that. The Glock 49. I've said for a long time I thought the 19X was really the opposite of what most people would want. What I would want. I would want the compact-sized frame and the long slide. I like the long slide for the more velocity, the greater shootability, longer sight radius, more velocity, easier to clear malfunctions. And since I carry strong side hip, the harder thing to conceal is the grip. Why do I care? Why would I give up the extra barrel length? And that has no real bearing on how hard it is to conceal. It's like the 19X, I just scratched my head. I'm like, that's the opposite of what I want. Well, it seems now, years later, they've come out with the 49, which would be actually what I would be looking for. I do like a 17 as far as Glocks go. And if you could get a 17 and with a 19 size grip, why not? So that is pretty cool, and thanks to Luke for that. And this is from Battle Axe Joe. That's a pretty cool handle name. I know it doesn't meet the 3-year requirement, but what are your thoughts on the Stealth Arms Platypus 1911? So, if you're not super familiar with my experience with double stack 1911s or 2011s, I was the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters. Also, really like competition shooting. I carried even before Staccato existed, back when they were STI. I carried, and I'm blessed to own 2 STI 2011s. They are perhaps the best policing CONUS, meaning not really nasty, austere environments, but a place where you can maintain them and clean them. Best combat handgun made by human beings, period. Again, with the caveat that you can clean them and maintain them, not like going to Afghanistan or something. They are phenomenal. They shoot great. They are fantastic. I really, really like them. And going back to his 3-year thing, this is an unknown, right? So I don't know. It takes Glock mags, which I don't like. Everybody wants everything to take Glock mags. But if you're running a gun like that, I would say get a magazine that's engineered for that gun instead of trying to engineer a gun that will take Glock mags. That, I have dubious thoughts as to whether or not it will be as reliable as a 2011. There's a reason 2011s, STI, now Staccato, it's a reason they cost what they cost. I don't think they're overpriced. I think they cost that much because that's what it takes to make a really good, reliable double stack 1911. Some designs lend themselves to be made very cheaply and still work, like a Glock design. Glock is not a super expensive gun, and there are many knockoffs that work okay because it's a cheap, easy design. Part of the genius of the Glock is its simplicity. It's very simple moving parts. A 1911 and ergo a 2011 is not that. They are very complex, and many of those parts have to be made and hand-fitted and made to exacting tolerances. All right, the 1911 harkens from a more civilized age, a more elegant age where men were skilled craftsmen, and they made those guns by hand. And many of the things on a 1911 is not like a Glock. Like, you can't just grab an extractor and pop it in if you break one like you can with a Glock. They require hand tuning, hand fitting. That's just one example. So, honestly, my advice is go with an STI. I'm looking at the price on this, and it doesn't give me confidence, and the fact that it takes Glock mags doesn't give me confidence. Hopefully I'm pleasantly surprised and it runs great. But much like when Springfield came out with their whatever double stack 1911, if you just want it as a range toy, that's one thing, but I wouldn't trust my life to it. And this one obviously is an unknown. I would not advise you to get it to trust your life to it. If it's really good, in years it'll take over and it'll be a big competitor on the scene. But my advice would be, for that price, it's still not a cheap gun. Go look for an old used STI Hawk, kind of their base model back in the day before they were Staccato. You can find them for not crazy prices, and you know those work. Why wouldn't you just go buy an old STI Hawk? That would be my advice. Or some of the other more base models. They have a proven, reliable track record. If this thing works, great. I hope that it does, and I like seeing companies like this doing stuff, and I love double stack 1911s. Again, if you just want it as a range tool, you want to roll the dice with $1,400. That's the MSRP I saw on their website. If you want to roll the dice and say, hey, maybe it'll work, and if it doesn't, I'm willing to put in several $100s worth of work and get it to run properly, that's cool. I would not advise you to get it and run it on a duty belt. I would not advise you to get it for any kind of life-saving tool until it's proven. There's a reason for the 3-year rule. I've learned the hard way more than once, sadly. So that's why I tell you guys that. Don't be a beta tester in a gunfight. Oh, and getting on Spotify, I just logged on there, and Spotify is not my main host. I started podcasting back in 2018. I'd never even heard of Spotify, I don't think. If I had, I wasn't real familiar with them. They've kind of taken over now. I've thought about switching over to them as my main host, but I was just on there checking numbers. And it really humbles me, guys. Thank you for all of you guys that tune in and listen and follow the show. Pretty even split. The demographics and breakdown are pretty even, I think, between Apple and Spotify. So these numbers you could roughly double. But over 1,000 followers. So if you're not following the show, subscribe to the show, whatever your vernacular the app uses that you're using. Like and follow, subscribe, leave a review. But over 1,000 regular followers of the show here. And then again, double that. And then whatever else the other podcast apps that people listen to on. Here's the one that's really humbling. 128,000 listeners just on Spotify. Again, you can kind of double that for Apple and then all the other podcast platforms. That is phenomenal. Thank you guys so much for all that you do. I hope that you had a blessed 2023, and I hope that you have a blessed 2024. Let's wrap this up with a tactical tip and then a tactical verse of the day. Do you carry an EDC flashlight? Odds are pretty high if you listen to this show, you probably do, right? One of the things that you can do, especially if you have a subdued color EDC flashlight, that, especially if it's a black, right? What a horrible color for a flashlight, because if you drop it at night, it's black. But sadly, a lot of flashlights come in black. What you can do is take an obnoxious colored rubber band, put it on the bottom so it's in your pocket. You can't see it when it's in your pocket. And this does a couple of things. It gives extra friction to maybe stop it from coming out of your pocket. It gives you an extra rubber band if you need one. It gives a bright color if you drop it. But one really cool thing you can do if your flashlight, which I assume it does, has a clip, you can run it, if you get one of the proper size, from the back of the clip to the front of the bezel of the flashlight over the back of your hand. So that if you're doing something like a speed reload or, finger tightening lug nuts on a spare tire you just changed because you broke down on the side of the road, that flashlight will stay in your hand. That's pretty cool. All that with just a rubber band. I picked that up from somebody else along the way, and I wish I could remember. Maybe it was like Survival Dispatch or something. I don't remember where I picked it up exactly, but it's a great tip. And just, why not put a rubber band on there? It does really work when you can have it just attached to your hand. It's really nice, really handy. Forgive the pun there. But also the other benefits of being able to see it if you drop it. Tactical verse of the day. This is the writings of Paul. But I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I have preached to others, I myself should become disqualified. Discipline your body. It's not the most important thing, right? We are spiritual beings that live in a body. But your body is a gift of God. It is also the temple of the Holy Spirit. Take care of it. The greatest of all the commandments is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first commandment. And the second like it is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. To love your neighbor, that denotes that you love yourself. Part of loving yourself is taking care of yourself. So take care of the body that God gave you. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.